No matter if they got elected fair and square or not, African leaders are lining up behind Ibrahim Traoré, ready to follow his lead in their own countries. And the latest shockwave? It came straight from Botswana, a country the West always pointed to as a model of stability, diplomacy, and close cooperation. Then came the moment nobody saw coming. The Botswana President said Traoré wakes up, dreams it, makes it law, and I'm going to do the same. The room went completely silent. Cameras kept rolling, but somewhere in Washington, alarms went off. This wasn't just praise or empty talk, this was a clear signal. A signal that the fault lines in Africa are shifting, and fast. What makes it even more surprising? These cracks are showing up in places no one expected. So what exactly did Botswana's leaders say that set off alarm bells? Why is the military intelligence community buzzing? And is there really a growing alliance with Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the man known as Africa's most feared revolutionary? Rumors are swirling about secret military pacts, whispered closures of foreign bases, and a pan-African vision reaching places the West hoped would never see it, this far south. So what's really going on in Botswana? Why is the US suddenly on edge? And what does this mean for Africa's fight for sovereignty? Let's dive in. Captain Ibrahim Traoré didn't just take power in Burkina Faso. He rewrote the entire playbook on African leadership. He didn't wait for a green light. He didn't follow old rules or ask for anyone's permission. In a continent where many leaders are still tangled in colonial-era chains disguised as cooperation agreements, Traoré broke free. He didn't just win a battle, he declared a new kind of independence, and he did it with action, not just words. His very first move? Kicking out French troops, ending decades of military presence that pretended to be peacekeeping but really protected foreign control over Africa's resources. Then Traoré took a bold step. He pulled Burkina Faso out of ECOWAS, an organization many see as just a puppet for Western influence. He shut down French military bases, kicked out NGOs meddling in the country's affairs, and took back control of gold mines that foreign companies had been draining for decades. Traoré made one thing crystal clear. Burkina Faso was done being a client state. But it wasn't just about what he tore down, it was about what he started building. Traoré set out to create a new kind of national economy, one based on true sovereignty, control over resources, and a revival of agriculture. He wasn't dropping bombs, he was waging war on neocolonialism, with policies and bold moves. In doing so, Traoré became more than just a soldier. He became a powerful idea. And ideas, they can't be bombed, sanctioned, or assassinated. At just 36 years old, Traoré was younger than most world leaders you see at UN meetings or African Union gatherings. He didn't inherit power from some political family dynasty. He grabbed it with a clear mission to finish what Thomas Sankara started, a vision the West thought had died with Sankara. For countless young Africans, fed up with the old guard, those politicians in suits chasing loans instead of legacies, Traoré represents a new kind of leadership. Unapologetic, grassroots, and completely independent. And that's what makes him so scary to Washington. Not his guns, not his speeches, but the fact that his example could spread and be copied.
Traoré isn't acting solo anymore.
He's sparking a movement. First Mali, then Nigeria, then Guinea, and now Botswana. What felt impossible just a year ago is starting to take real shape. A continental shift that no longer revolves around Brussels or Washington. A new Pan-African orbit is forming, centered on sovereignty, self-defense, and unity. That's why every time Traoré speaks, it's not just Burkina Faso tuning in, it's the whole continent recalibrating. For decades, Botswana was the West's poster child in Africa, a democratic, mineral-rich, cooperative state, steady, stable, and predictable. Western governments loved it, not for its power, but because it played by their rules. Polite, moderate, unthreatening. But 2024 changed everything. Enter Duma Boko, a veteran opposition leader who stepped into the presidency with a reputation as Southern Africa's conscience. He brought not just experience, but sharp ideas and a clear vision. He didn't campaign on radical change, but his speeches quickly started sounding less like dry IMF policy papers and more like bold Pan-African calls to action. At first, it was subtle. He praised African innovation, questioned crippling debt, and pushed for homegrown solutions. Then came the game changer, a televised speech that blew up social media and set diplomatic backchannels buzzing. He named Captain Ibrahim Traoré, not to criticize or warn, but to honor and respect.
Traoré wakes up,
Dreams it, and then turns that dream into law. "I'm going to do the same," Boko said, his eyes locked on the camera, his voice steady and firm. This wasn't just respect, it was a declaration. With that one sentence, Boko wasn't just admiring Traoré from afar, he was ready to follow in his footsteps. But not by stirring up chaos, instead through bold, unapologetic policies that put African interests front and center. He talked about flipping the script, breaking free from colonial-era rules, rewriting policy without checking in with foreign powers, trusting instinct over orders. For a leader from Southern Africa, especially one from a nation so deeply tied to Western alliances, this was nothing short of earth-shaking. Suddenly, Botswana wasn't just the West's reliable outpost anymore, it became unpredictable, a wild card. And in the high-stakes game of geopolitics, wild cards are scarier than outright enemies. They're unpredictable. While he praised Ibrahim Traoré, Botswana's president promised to follow his lead. But here's the kicker. Traoré had kicked out Western troops. So, was Botswana quietly hosting them all this time? That question cut deep, shaking the carefully maintained illusion of transparency that cloaks so many US-Africa military ties. Within days, General Michael Langley, the head of AFRICOM, had to jump in. His response? Vague. There's no base, just a partnership. But in geopolitics, that kind of answer doesn't cut it anymore. Partnership has become a buzzword, a smokescreen. Behind that word lies a tangled web of activities that look and feel a lot like an occupation, just without the official label. So, what does partnership really mean on the ground? It means joint military exercises, dressed up as capacity building, but really aimed at shaping African forces to align with Western interests. It means handing over surveillance gear, framed as aid, but strategically placed to keep an eye not just on local threats, but on any move that might affect US power in the region.
when Western leaders talk about partnership,
What they really mean is handing over high-tech gear, aircraft, drones, encrypted comms systems, all tightly controlled by US advisors or contractors who have the final say. But even more crucial, partnership means letting the US use what they call cooperative security locations, basically secret bases that supply fuel, logistics, satellite coverage, and intelligence support, all without having to answer to the public. And Botswana, it's been quietly in the mix for all of this. They've hosted US military delegations, taken part in AFRICOM training exercises, and accepted defense equipment and digital tools from the West. Before we dig deeper, quick question. Are you enjoying the video so far? If you are, hit like, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more stories on Black Africa. Now let's keep going. Here's the thing. No public conversation has ever taken place in Botswana about what this deepening military relationship really means for the country's future. Put simply, Botswana has been folded into America's military network in Africa, but without any public fanfare or official flag waving. And in a time when African nations are waking up to their own power and potential, that setup isn't just awkward, it's downright unsustainable. Now with Boko stepping up and aligning himself with Traoré's bold vision, one that's all about non-alignment, military sovereignty and anti-imperialist solidarity, he's throwing a serious wrench in the works of the model AFRICOM has spent 20 years perfecting. Because if Botswana, a country known for playing along, starts questioning whether these partnerships are really equal, it could set off a chain reaction across the continent. What happens when a country asks for a full list of foreign operatives on its soil? What happens when its government demands access to the intelligence gathered from its own skies and equipment? What happens when training deals get paused, not because of hostility, but out of principle? These aren't just what-if scenarios anymore. Boko's words mark the start of a new political era, where bold talk leads to scrutiny, and scrutiny leads to a breaking point.
He didn't beat around the bush.
What kind of freedom are we really celebrating, he asked, when our security is controlled from outside, when our own intelligence is shared with people who don't answer to us? This wasn't just some vague complaint. It was a serious challenge, a direct accusation. It questioned the whole idea that working with the West militarily is automatically a good thing. He suggested that this kind of cooperation might actually be a soft takeover, a way to outsource our sovereignty while calling it friendship. And in this new era, post-Traoré, these aren't just empty words. They're calls to action, because Africa now has leaders who don't just talk tough, they back it up with real moves. And when one country takes a stand, others won't be far behind. If Botswana starts reviewing, limiting, or even cutting ties with AFRICOM, it won't just cause headaches for the US. It will shatter the whole idea that these bases across Africa are friendly neighbors. It will expose what many African thinkers have long suspected: behind all the aid, flags, press photos, and handshakes lies a military machine that's less about protecting Africa and more about watching and controlling it. Once that curtain is pulled back, Botswana won't be the only one asking tough questions. Ghana will want answers, Uganda will demand clarity, Senegal will raise concerns, South Africa could even call for a full reckoning. When that happens, the US military presence, spread out over 29 known locations across Africa, faces its biggest threat yet. Not armed rebellion, not violence, but outright rejection. And that's the quiet storm brewing right now in the West's war rooms. Because the moment Africa stops mixing up surveillance with support and training with genuine trust, that tight military grip starts to slip. And when that grip loosens, what was once sold as cooperation suddenly looks a lot more like a quiet occupation. And when that story takes hold, this won't just be a PR headache, it'll trigger a full-on strategic retreat. Because if Botswana starts to question the deal, who won't? That's exactly why Washington is in full panic mode right now. This isn't just about Botswana, it's about setting a precedent. For decades, the US relied on a balance of loyalty across Africa. West Africa might have been unstable, sure. But Southern Africa? That was supposed to be the safe zone. Botswana, Namibia, South Africa, the West's trusted allies. The continent's clean-shaven gentlemen. Now that trust is crumbling. If Botswana pulls back, South Africa might stop playing it neutral. If Botswana questions US military ties, Namibia might start digging into AFRICOM's surveillance tech. If Botswana embraces Pan-African ideals, Zimbabwe, Zambia, and Mozambique could follow with bolder moves on the world stage. Suddenly, what once looked like isolated resistance in the Sahel turns into a continental wave. not fought with guns, but fueled by determination. See, Washington's not just worried about one country rethinking its defense deals. They're scared of Africa building its own defense playbook, one that doesn't rely on outside trainers, advisors, or security packages with strings attached. This is a doctrine where Africans protect African resources with strategies made right here. No more following blueprints cooked up in Pentagon think tanks. This isn't just about losing military control, it's about the fear of becoming irrelevant. When African leaders say, we'll train our own soldiers, we'll build our own satellites, we'll guard our own gold, what they're really saying is, your time is up. And in Washington, that hits harder than any missile ever could. Interestingly, this fear, this slipping hold the West has on Africa, didn't start in Botswana. It started in Ouagadougou, where Traoré broke the mold. Now that ripple is reaching Gaborone. And this isn't a one-off, it's a trend, a wave of new thinking spreading across the continent. And it's not happening behind closed doors or in secret meetings, it's happening out in the open, on the streets, in parliaments, classrooms, and protests. African youth aren't just asking for independence anymore, they're demanding what was never finished, true liberation. They look back at their grandparents' revolutions and see freedom left incomplete. Flags waving without real control. Constitutions written without real power. Elections held without true sovereignty. So this call for full freedom isn't just cultural, it's military, it's economic. That's why Traoré's name echoes not just in Burkina Faso, but all the way in Johannesburg, Kampala, Nairobi, and now Gaborone. Botswana's shift isn't a one-off. It's the next chapter in a continent-wide awakening, where Burkina Faso took back its gold, Mali said no to colonial monetary rules, and Niger kicked out French and American troops.
Botswana is starting to ask a tough question.
Has this so-called partnership just become a quiet form of occupation? What connects movements like this isn't just shared ideas, it's real, urgent necessity. Africans are waking up to the fact that their minerals are fueling foreign stock markets, their data is being tracked by outside tech giants, their debts are used as leverage, and their military training programs are actually backdoors for outside powers to control governments. Worst of all, their own leaders often sign away sovereignty in the name of development. That's why people are rallying behind leaders like Traoré and watching leaders like Boko with hope. Because the dream is clear and growing. One currency, one defense force, one continental voice. No more begging, no more foreign bases, no more betrayal. This isn't just politics anymore. It's about who Africa is, its identity. If Washington's panic shows the old order crumbling, then the quiet alliance between Traoré and Boko signals the birth of something new. When President Boko said, "I will do it," referencing Traoré's approach, he wasn't calling for rebellion. He was promising a reset, a new way of leading that puts African needs first, not last. A future where the continent stops being a testing ground for other countries' policies and becomes the command center of its own destiny. And the next step? It's not just symbolic, it's military. Because no revolution lasts without defense, no vision stands without protection, no sovereignty endures without the power to enforce it. That's why talk of a continental army isn't some far-off dream anymore. It's urgent. This army wouldn't invade anyone. It would protect Congo's coltan from plunder, Guinea's bauxite from theft, Burkina Faso's gold from sabotage, Botswana's diamonds from corporate takeover. More than that, it would deter. Foreign powers only move in where there's division. Unity? That's the ultimate weapon. By openly aligning with Traoré, President Boko is laying the groundwork for this future. He's challenging the idea that security has to be imported. He's saying what very few have dared to say out loud. Africa can defend itself. Africa can train its own. Africa doesn't need guardians from outside. It needs to take charge of its own destiny. And that's exactly why the West is nervous right now. Because this change isn't coming with coups or tanks. It's coming with confidence, with clarity, with leaders who might not be perfect, but they're present, and finally saying, enough. This isn't about just one country anymore. It's a chain reaction. Botswana hasn't kicked out a single foreign soldier yet, but its words shook the halls of power. In today's world, where surveillance is everywhere, speeches hit like earthquakes. In the age of non-stop information, a bold statement can feel like a bomb going off. And across Africa, those sparks are starting to catch fire. From Ouagadougou to Gaborone, Bamako to Harare, Kinshasa to Kigali, Africa is done waiting to be saved. It's saving itself. And in the process, it's finally saying what should have been said long ago. We are not your base. We are not your data mine. We are not your experiment. We are not your pawn. We are Africa. And we are rising. What do you think? Should African leaders stand with Ibrahim Traoré and take back their sovereignty? Why are US troops still stationed across Africa, but African troops aren't allowed on US soil? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Do you think African nations will be able to kick out Western military bases without facing so-called consequences? If you want more videos like this, subscribe and hit the bell icon so you never miss an update. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay tuned.